The lawsuit that almost ended it all. It is easy to look at the Freedom Factory today and see a massive success. It is a place where thousands of people gather to watch fast cars and celebrate American horsepower. But back in late 2020, this dream was balancing on a knife's edge. Garrett Mitchell, the man we know as Cleetus, had just poured every dime he had into this derelict speedway. He was $850,000 in the hole, sleeping on the floor of the infield, trying to make this massive gamble work. He needed a win. He needed the Cleetus and Cars event to be a massive hit to keep the lights on. But what happened that day in November would haunt him for years. The atmosphere was electric. The burnout pit was the center of attention. This is where drivers push their cars to the absolute limit, spinning tires until they pop, creating massive clouds of smoke. It is loud, it is chaotic, and usually it is controlled chaos. But on this specific day, a participant rolled into the pit with a vehicle that frankly looked like a death trap. It was a stripped-down hot rod, barely a frame and a seat. Now here is the deal. This vehicle had already been flagged for radiator issues. It had failed before. Yet somehow it was approved to enter the pit not once, not twice, but 3 times. As the driver revved the engine, building up massive pressure, the unthinkable happened. The radiator hose, unable to withstand the heat and pressure, didn't just leak, it exploded. A geyser of coolant, superheated to over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, erupted from the machine. It didn't spray the driver, it sprayed into the stands. Jacob Ethier, a 23-year-old fan who had traveled just to see his hero, was sitting right in the splash zone. He wasn't doing anything risky, he was just watching the show. The boiling liquid covered him, causing third-degree burns over 30% of his body. The scene was horrific. This wasn't a minor injury. We are talking about skin peeling away, immediate shock, and life-altering pain. Ethier was rushed to the hospital where he had to undergo surgeries and skin grafts. He later described the scraping wounds procedure where doctors have to scrub away dead tissue. It is a level of agony most of us cannot even imagine. Mitchell was devastated. In the immediate aftermath, the guilt was crushing. He had invited these people to his home, his track, and one of them was now fighting for recovery in a burn unit. He paid for some of the bills out of his own pocket, trying to make things right. But the legal system doesn't run on apologies. A lawsuit followed, accusing the event organizers of negligence. The claim was that there were lax barriers, no requirements for fire suits, and that they knowingly allowed an unsafe rig to perform. The critics came out in droves, labeling the Freedom Factory a death trap. And get this, for a while Mitchell tried to downplay it on his main channel. He kept the Cleetus smile on. But on a secondary channel, the cracks showed. He disabled comments. He looked tired. He looked like a man who knew he had made a mistake that could never be fully fixed. The backlash was severe. People on forums and Reddit were tearing him apart, pointing out that a helicopter ride alone cost $40,000 in the U.S. Without insurance, Jacob was looking at millions in potential costs. Mitchell was caught in the middle of a moral and financial storm. He had to overhaul everything: new barriers, strict inspections, massive insurance hikes. The Freedom Factory survived, but the innocence was gone. Mitchell had learned the hard way that when you play with fire, or in this case, pressurized coolant, eventually someone gets burned. But the stress of that day was just the tip of the iceberg, because while his conscience was under attack, his bank account was being hunted by the federal government. The trap of the American dream. So here is the deal. Most people see 3.5 million subscribers and assume Garrett Mitchell is printing money. They see the private jet, the racetrack, the fleet of cars, and they think, this guy has it made. But the reality of 2020 was a financial horror story. Buying the DeSoto Speedway, which became the Freedom Factory, wasn't just an investment. It was a massive gamble. We are talking about $850,000 of liquid cash. He drained his accounts. He maxed out his credit. He went all in. And then the world stopped. COVID hit right as he closed the deal. Suddenly, he couldn't host events. He couldn't open the gates. The ad revenue on YouTube tanked because advertisers were pulling back. The algorithm started favoring talking heads over tire smoke. Mitchell was left with a massive, crumbling facility that was costing him thousands of dollars a day just to sit there, and he had zero income coming in to support it. He was alone. He wasn't living in a mansion. He was sleeping on an air mattress in the infield of the track, surrounded by weeds and broken concrete. He was the janitor, the security guard, and the CEO all at once. The stress began to manifest physically. He started having anxiety attacks. The pressure on his relationship with his partner, Nicole, was immense. Imagine trying to plan a future when you don't even know if you can pay the electric bill for your giant empty stadium. But here's where it gets truly scary. The IRS doesn't care about your bad luck. In the middle of this chaos, Mitchell bounced a check to the Internal Revenue Service. That is not like bouncing a check to your local grocery store. When you owe the federal government money and the check doesn't clear, the alarms go off. He lived in constant fear that the government was going to come in and seize the track. He described it later as feeling like he was in a trap. He had built this cage for himself out of asphalt and fences. He couldn't sell it because the market was dead. He couldn't run it because of the lockdowns. He was stuck. This period stripped away the Cleetus persona. There were no jokes about doing it for Dale when he was staring at a bank balance that was bleeding red. He confessed in a raw, honest video that he felt like he was drowning. The weight of the payroll for his employees, the insurance premiums that skyrocketed after the accident we just talked about, and the looming taxes were crushing him. He eventually clawed his way out. He diversified his business, bought a stake in a performance parts company, and when the world opened up, the fans came back. But those scars don't just go away. That financial trauma changed how he operated. It fueled a desperate need to go bigger, harder, and faster to ensure he never went back to that air mattress on the floor. But that drive, that need to constantly top the last video, pushed him toward risks that were even more dangerous than a radiator explosion. He started looking for thrills in the sky and on professional racetracks. And that is when the physical danger went from risky to potentially fatal.